Good afternoon and half a day. The Committee on General Government Operation, Appropriation, and Housing is now called to order. For the record, today is Wednesday, June 16, and the time now is 2 o'clock. Notice for this budget hearing was disseminated via email to all senators and all main media broadcasting outlets. First public notice was issued on June 7th, followed by June 10th. The committee will hear and accept testimony on Bill 55-36 COR, the fiscal year 2022 Appropriation Act as requested by the Governor, relative to the Office of Public Accountability, fiscal year 2022 budget. Joining me this afternoon, I have Senator Mary Torres, Senator Chris Duenas, and Senator Brown, and we also have the Oversight Chair of the Office of the Public Accountability, which is Vice Speaker Senator Tina Rose Munoz-Barnes. Those testifying on behalf of Bill 5536 relative to the Office of Public Accountability, we have Speaker B.J. Cruz, the OPA, the auditor himself, and his staff, Mr. Hernandez. Written testimony shall be submitted to the committee. Please provide my legislative staff with your written testimony for photocopying. Testimonies may be read, and lengthy testimonies should be summarized to about 5 minutes. But Speaker Cruz, you have all afternoon if you need. All right? All right, sir. Those testifying will be allowed to present oral testimony. Once you're done, please remain in the room for question or for additional testimony as may be desired by members of the committee. Questions and testimony shall be confined to the substance or nature of the agenda, which is the budget of the Office of Public Accountability. Personal inference as to the character or the motive of any senator or any individual testifying is not permitted. Any violation of this general rule of conduct will result in removal from the budget hearing room. Proper form and decorum shall be practiced by all present in the public hearing room for this proceedings. Individuals who fail to maintain proper form and decorum may be restricted from providing oral testimony and may be asked to leave or be escorted and removed from the room. When you speak, please make sure that the microphone is on and that you speak into the microphone. Please state your name and your title for the record. At this time, I ask the panel members to please rise, and for the sergeant arms to please swear them in.
Kindly raise your right hand. Under penalties of perjury, you all affirm that any and all information that you provide today, whether it be verbally, electronically, and in writing, be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Mr. Chair, they're both under oath. You may proceed.
Thank you, Sergeant Arms.
Thank you,
Speaker Cruz, I'd ask Mr. Public Auditor if you could please begin your testimony on your budget. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I've had your unenviable position in the past, so I will not bore you with reading through 20 minutes of PowerPoint presentations. When we submitted our budget in March, we included a PowerPoint presentation, and today we updated it as it relates to our personnel in our office. But otherwise, the testimony that we attached to our budget presentation and was served to the speaker in March is the oral testimony that we will provide. As I said, having been a member of this body and on this committee and sharing it, I understand the difficulty that all of you have in trying to address the needs of the government and to provide for all the needs of the government, especially in these days where how long the largesse that we currently have will continue and whether or not what happens. You will note, Mr. Chairman, that the budget presentation from the Office of Public Accountability has a very minor, barely 10% increase that we included just for organic growth. I decided I would spare you all the Christmas tree wish list and just have organic growth in the hopes of being able to give my auditors their raises, their increments during this year. And while I'm on it, I probably might as well address it. I want the public to understand that the individuals that we have employed at our office are really dedicated public servants. I have 4 individuals that are my accountability auditor 3s. And they're there only because they love the office. Because if they wanted to, and they wanted to apply for positions of internal auditors at any other department, including the Department of Administration, they could and would be selected immediately and would probably be getting a salary increase of anywhere from $15,000 to $20,000. One of my accountability auditor 3s left me last year to go to DOA, and I thank her for coming back this year. But the position for Chief Internal Auditor opened at DOA, and it would make a double-digit increase in her salary, but she's made a commitment to the office and has stayed. With me today is Jarek Hernandez, and he really oversees all the procurement appeals that we have in our office. He's one of our other accountability auditor 3s, and he would and could be hired almost anywhere else, either in their procurement division or in their auditing offices, and would make more than he makes with us, but I'm thankful that he remains. I have another auditor, Vince Duenas, who was the internal auditor at GWA, and thankfully Doris was able to bring him back a couple of years ago, and he's staying, though I'm sure if he wanted to, he'd be marketable almost anywhere. And my last one is Clarissa Roque, and also she could also be employed elsewhere. Over the last 2 years since I've been there, 10 people have left the office for various reasons. At least 10, maybe even more. But just within the last year, the increases that they received going someplace else. One, my last CPA joined the OFB staff for a double-digit increase. One of my auditor 2s went down to the port for an additional almost 20 difference, and she was a 2 in our office. We've had 2s that have moved elsewhere, to the university and then to the hospital. And so really, seriously, were it not for the dedication of these 4 that are my core, I'd be nowhere at the office, because all the younger ones who haven't been there more than 10 years, they, as soon as they're trained, they get their CPA, they get their auditor 2 positions, they get the 2-year requisite to be promoted, they're immediately given offers elsewhere. And I don't blame them for it. I really don't. I think it's crazy for me to insist when they come in and they're in tears saying that they feel really badly. I tell them, well, if you don't take it, I'm going to fire you, because you need to also look out for yourself. And but they've all moved on, and so fortunately, My 4 auditor threes did some interviews this year, and we picked up 6 new auditor ones, and they are wonderful. They really, the university is producing some excellent stuff, and we've been able to get them on our staff, and they're really enthusiastic about the work that they're doing, and I'm really happy about that. I have a couple of 2s, and they're also really enthusiastic about their work. I fear every time I come into the office that one or 2 of them is going to come in and tell me that he's taking a better offer somewhere else, and that's my big fear at the office is not making any mistakes in our audits, because I know that they're really diligent in their QAR, and they do a double and triple review to make sure that all the T's are crossed and the I's dotted, and everything has some evidence behind it. But it's just, my fear is who's next that's going to tell me that they're going to go, because we can't compete. I mean, we had, at the same time that one came to you guys, there was another announcement for an auditor 1, it was an accountant 1 at one of the utilities, a 1. And this employee that you got is a CPA and was a 2 with us. But she didn't have the requisite number of years to apply for the position at GPA with a 2, though she was a very young woman with a CPA. She couldn't take the position at the GPA, and that position was going to pay $20,000 more than our 2s are being paid in our office. It just, it's an unfair fight, and we just can't. And but I have a really good crew of 6 new ones that we filled in. I have 2 that remained, and my core of 4, and that's our staff. There was a period a few years ago when there were 17 auditors besides the public auditor, but we're now down to 14. And we'll work with that for a while. I know that some of you want us to do some major audits of the CARES and the ARP funding. We're addressing a couple of those. And I know some of you asked why the office hasn't taken money from the CARES Act and why we've not accepted any of the CARES money. It was a purposeful and deliberate decision by the office that we thought that we probably should not accept any CARES money to enhance our office. One, because we probably couldn't hire anybody to take the, if we were going to try to contract to try to do certain things, it'd be really hard to find someone to contract to do some of the audits because everybody's conflicted. And the office didn't want to take the money itself because we didn't want to be impaired from being able to audit the expenditure by the administration of the CARES money. We can take money from the legislature because it's the general fund and everybody's getting it. It's not like it's specific to us, and it's not going to look like we're being paid off to or given money and so that we can quietly not look into certain things. This is just for the general operation of the office, and we don't want to ever impair our our credibility because, as I explained to the staff, our reputation and our credibility in the community is what we stand for. And once we lose that, if people think that we're partisan or not doing things because we're hiding behind whatever, people will not believe in the office, and I don't ever want that to happen. I know that everybody knows my background and where I came from, but I have to hand it to my staff. They are very diligent about moving forward with things, and they will tell me if they don't believe that I should be in an audit. When we were doing the audit of the expenditure for the inauguration committee, Jarek himself drew up a whole chart and explained how all the things of why I could not. And he and the auditor with him came in and explained, sir, we've done the impairment chart, and we don't believe that you should be involved in audit. And I respected that. And the whole time they didn't discuss it with me. I didn't ask them about it. In fact, when it was posted on the website was the first time I saw it. They're that strict. I mean, it's not the Chinese wall that we've seen in some law offices. This one is an impenetrable wall, and they are real sticklers about it. There was another audit, and they came in and they told me, you shouldn't be involved in this for fear of what is going to be said in the community, and I stood back. It came out, it happened, and what was found in it maybe didn't get me invited to a couple of family picnics, but hey, that's the office. We have to report what we have to report, and so I'm very, very, very happy and proud of the staff that have remained loyal and stay. And my fours all have at least 12 years in the office. One is 19 years in the office, on and off, come back. But it's something that they really want to do. And so from my end, I try to take care of them in that I had one of the other staffers apply for a federal grant, and the federal grant pays for training. And so Department of Interior gives us annually about $75,000 for training. And so we pay for the fees and registration fees to attend classes, because as auditors, you have a peer review every 3 years, and you're required to have 80 hours every 2 years of continuing education. And so we're constantly in training. We either have somebody coming out, or thankfully now with Zoom, we're doing it online. But it was constant. I mean, it was driving me crazy sometimes, because those of you that work with me have known that I want work product, I want to see something out. And the training sometimes can take a whole week out of the office. And it drives me crazy. I've been learning to take a deep breath and just let it go. You know, it'll come out and it'll it'll be there and we can be proud of the end product. But so it's been good for me there. They've taught me how to breathe, and they've taught me when I'm not supposed to be in certain things, and they keep me in my place, and I'm very, very proud of the work product that they provide to us. Our procurement appeals the same way. We work through those and get those through. And so you'll see that we try at least to get about 12 performance audits out a year. We try to move through our procurement appeals. Last year we had 12 procurement appeals, 9. We issued 3 decisions and 6 were dismissed because I tried to get them to work out a stipulation rather than go through the whole process. And the other thing that we do is we oversee the financial audits. The office conducts the RFP for the selection of the external auditor that's going to do the financial audit for each of the agencies. We review it, and then we announce it, and when there's a review committee that sits down, 2 members of my office sit, 2 members from the agency sit, and we get 1 outside person to be on the review committee. And then they come back and make a recommendation on who the external auditor ought to be. Once that decision is made, we also then have certain auditors assigned to certain agencies. One of the OPA staff auditors will work with Deloitte or with EY, and they will get on it, and they will schedule the meetings, the entrance meetings. They will keep up of what's going on. They're constantly with them about how are things moving along. And this last year, as a result of the Speaker introducing legislation to get the audit out by March 30th, I asked her to please give the OPA staff some time to work with the agencies to train them to get audits out by by March the 30th. And this year, we got everything out by March the 30th except for the Guam-wide audit. And that was because I'm hoping that all of you read the compliance reports. Government spends over $2 million to get the external auditors. The budget for the external auditors is more than the budget for my office. So I implore all of you, and even the public that's listening, please take some time to read it. I know you're not going to be able to understand the numbers because you can't prove the numbers, but read the MD&A that's in there. It really is probably the most informative thing that you will ever read. If you're all seasoned senators, but the new senators, I tell them, read the MD&A in the financial audit. It will give you unbelievable background. When Senator Duenas was at Guam Housing Corporation, the management discussion and analysis was the most enlightening thing to read because he talked about all the different programs that they had and why it was done, and it explained everything. If you ever want to know anything about an agency, it's in the MD&A that's done by an agency, and so read that. That's barely 10 pages. And the other thing that I ask all of you to read is the compliance part. In the end, they will have the notes in the back read those, because that will tell you where the problems are. You can't figure out the numbers, but as they say, you can read the Fenno English when you get down to the back side of it and understand what all those numbers in the front we're talking about. But please read that, because then it gives you an idea of what the problems are at that agency, especially those of you that have oversight over those agencies. If you read the notes in the back, you will understand where the problems are and what needs to be addressed. You will know, where their shortcomings are, and so those are important. So we oversee 25 financial audits in an effort to address the Speaker's concern of getting it out by March 30th. I ordered all of the agencies to develop a Gantt chart of when and what dates certain things were going to be done to get the audit out. And for this upcoming one, I've also instructed all the agencies to develop a Gantt chart for the entire year. Not only what you're going to do between September and March, when you close out and when you issue your audit, but what the Gantt chart should be for the entire year. When you should have your monthly reconciliations or quarterly reconciliations. Should you be having monthly or quarterly reports? Because the one thing that drove the auditors, and if you read the compliance report for the GovGuam audit, the unbelievable amount of reconciliations that were made late. I mean, one of the reasons why I ran for this office was I couldn't believe one year a reconciliation was allowed on May the 26th, which then resulted in a surplus on June the 1st. But I like 8 months after the year closed, you're going to make a reconciliation so that you can get a surplus. So now I have the agencies have a Gantt chart where they're supposed to be doing monthly and quarterly reconciliations and reports, so that when it comes to October the 1st, almost everything's done. It's only that last quarter. Feed that to the external auditor, and you can get it out probably December or January, hopefully. And so I'm moving them back. So we're trying. We really are trying to get them. As I said to the speaker, it's like trying to straighten my teeth. It's getting the braces to tighten and tighten and tighten, but you have to start out a little loose and then get tighter. And so we are working it. And my auditors are great. They oversee the audits, they read it, and they come in and they explain it to me, and then they sit down and they develop and write up the highlights that you see in the beginning with my signature at the bottom. That's not written by me. That's written by one of my young auditors who's there and has gone through and understands what's going on. I may sometimes say, I want you to highlight this, or I want you to highlight this in the highlights, since it's going to be my signature. But otherwise, they have the editorial freedom to make the decisions on what should be in that highlights, unless I feel that it's necessary to add something else. So I guess I've rambled on long enough, Chair. As I said, I understand your predicament, and I've only asked for a organic increase for the office. I've also asked for the authority to roll over, so that in the event that we have some, because At the end of the year, I'll be we're honest. In our CCR report and in our budget presentation to you, we admit we've had lapses the last couple of years. But the only reason why we've had lapses is because when an employee resigns, that lapse time between their leaving and picking up someone else, sometimes it crosses over into another year, but soon it's going to start to catch up. And that was my one big fear when I first got into the office was, if everybody had stayed that was there was no way that I was going to be able to use I could maybe for 1 year cover, but after that year, it'll be gone. But we're trying to also upgrade our system, our IT system. You'll see in our request in our budget presentation, we ask that you enact some legislation to request that all the agencies post their board meetings on their own website with a hyperlink to our office, or our office can hyperlink to them. Because being the repository of all those and being responsible for putting that up is taking up huge space in our computer. And if the individual agencies would post it on their own and provide us with a notice that they have it, we can have it hyperlinked to theirs, but not have it reside in our system. I'd like to be able to upgrade our system because one of the things that we discovered during this pandemic was working from home. My staff came back last May when we got down to 3 or 2, whatever that number was. They came back. But throughout, from the first week we started, I told them, we're getting paid. You continue to work your performance audits. You continue to oversee your financial audits. It's work as usual. It may not be, may not be in the office, but do what you can from your home. And so what we need now is a new IT system that can withstand cyber attacks. Because our system maintains a lot of really confidential information, all the work papers that are not public. I mean, the work papers, we don't even share the work papers with the Attorney General because the law prohibits it. But we need to have a system that we can be able to work remotely. As I keep telling my staff, I know that there are people from Deloitte and from EY who are home, are working from home, but their office is in New York. I know some of the Arizona people. And so we've got to be able to get our system to where we can do that remotely. And the other reason why it's important is because as an audit office, we have to have our peer review. And besides all of us having at least 80 hours every 2 years, we have peer review, and so people come in, other audit offices, come in and review our work product and sees to it that we follow all of the blue book, the yellow book, the green book, the red book, every color book conceivable. But all the GAGAS and GASB rules, that we follow all the rules. And that was supposed to have been done last summer. But of course, with COVID, nobody could come on to island. Maybe I could have gotten Saipan to come down, but I couldn't get anybody from marshals or from Palau or from the Federated States to come up to do the peer review. So I got an extension for 6 months, and then when there was the additional problems that we had last December, I got GAO to give me another extension, and so the extension now is to June of 22, but I've told the staff I want a peer review by the end of the summer, at the very latest, the end of the fall. And so we need a system because they're very cautious about electronically transferring all this information. And we don't know what their situation is going to be as to whether or not people can come in to do the... And we have to do a disclaimer that our peer review is delayed, you know. And so I'm embarrassed. I tease them. It's like having a scarlet A on my forehead saying that I haven't been checked. And so I want to get rid of that. I want to have the peer review as soon as possible because I want to proudly say that we passed the peer review and that there are no reasons why you have to question what the work product of this office is. And so if we can upgrade the system, we'd like to. We have applied for a grant. We got a small grant, but you all know, having run agencies, $10,000 isn't going to buy you a big system. And so we're looking, and we're hoping that we can purchase that so that we can get the office to be able to do a little more teleworking. We're paying for programs, the VPN, to make sure that everybody is secure, and because we don't want to have any problems at that office with all the information that all of you provide to us. I think I've covered everything, Jack. I should stop.
Thank you, Speaker. You know, I was going to ask you a question about CARES and federal funding, but never mind. I'm going to skip that. You made that very clear. Do you have any prior year obligations, sir? Any prior year obligations that are owed to employees? None at all. Okay, that's great. Your budget shows 7 vacant unfunded positions. We need to figure out a way how to get it funded. Okay, I know, and I like to first, number one, thank your office because I got 3 of the OPA, former OPA staff. You know, I'm going to announce that. And that's what makes my office work quite well. And when we read your audits and everything, they can understand it. Even though I do have a former comptroller and I got the former BBMR guy, we can actually understand what's going on. And then when we look at your reports, it's easy. It's easy to understand it because I've got auditors that can explain it, exactly what you're going through, Speaker, with your folks. And but what I like to ask you basically is that, you know, I'm going to consider looking at a pay study that everybody seems to be looking at, but we got to make the pay study somehow work to our advantage, not to our disadvantage like you're going through right now. Is that, I'll give you a good example, is that if the pay says, like an auditor, unless it's unclassified, but classified auditors should be the same pay across the board, no matter what agency. I don't know, what are your thoughts of that? So that, you know, if they're going to go to GWA or GPA, they're not going to get paid $10,000, $20,000 more for same position, but less work from coming from your office or from another agency. What would your opinion be on that one?
As the Vice Speaker will attest to you, I was in that position, or your position at one time, and was always saying, well, if you want to do something, get it changed. And to her credit, my predecessor, Doris Brooks, did have a study done. And she had a completely different category created. My staff are not accountants. They're not auditors. Doris had them specifically named Accountability Auditor 1, 2, and 3. These are positions, accountability auditor positions, don't appear anywhere else in the government of Guam. They're only our office. She had Leading Edge do a study. Leading Edge then turned it in, and Doris, because we're part of the Guam pay system, submitted it to DOA, who then looked at it and decided that the pay scales that were being given were more than they thought at DOA that they should be getting, and they were reduced. And so 4 of our positions that are vacant right now, our vacant positions are unfunded, are 2 supervisor attorney auditors positions, 1 managing auditor position, and a director. That was the staffing pattern that Doris designed for the office. That may be top heavy. So I purposely not filled it. And I purposely didn't fill it because, as many of you know, I've been talking about retirement forever and still here. And I thought that I should not hire someone into those management positions because I wanted it to be the decision of whoever was going to succeed me to do that. I didn't expect that I was going to be the only person that ran this last time. But I thought that that should be filled by somebody else because I didn't want those to be unclassified positions. I've had the argument with Doris when I was chair that I didn't think that they should all be unclassified positions. Because at one point she wanted to make the entire office unclassified. And I said, no, we cannot allow that. It's too important in an office to be constantly changing every 4 years or 8 years or 2 years, whatever, just when somebody comes in. There should be a cadre of, like I have, people with 12, 15, 19 years in the office who know how the office is supposed to run, that are there and are there regardless of who's at the top. And so they're classified. Those 4 positions, Doris had them unclassified positions. And unfortunately, when I came into the office, and the budget, because of the Trump tax cuts, was cut back so drastically, I had to let go of people. And Civil Service Commission advised me that before you can release people, you have to start with the unclassified, then do the ones that are on probation, and then you can give termination notices or leave notices to the classified employees. And unfortunately, I lost 2 of my unclassifieds went to you, and 1 classified. And so, I mean, they've all gone to make more than I'm making at the office now. I mean, they're making much better than they're staying at the office. One's a vice president, one's the CFO at the hospital, one's vice president at the university. So, I mean, they've done well. Doris trained them well, and they were brilliant auditors and deserved the new positions that they got. But they were there because of their loyalty to the office. But I don't think it should be unclassified. I'm starting to think about that, of maybe having one of those 4 vacant positions at the top be an unclassified, but then because I'm sure that my four I call them my management team, they're not going to want an unclassified position because they know what happens to unclassifieds in the event that there's a change of administration or a budget cut. And they're very smart about taking classified positions and protecting themselves. And so I know that leading edge plan, and the original plan is to have those 4 to be filled. But those are going to be high, really very substantial salaries. And I don't know if we can start budgeting for some of that. I mean, really seriously, they could be like this legislature where those 4 would be making more than my position because my salary is set by statute. In order to fill some of those positions, you'd have to be paying individuals more than what I'm getting paid currently. So that's why I haven't filled it.
Okay, and anyway, I know that my office will be communicating with your staff, and we'll figure out something. You need to be able to take care of your office because there's a lot of things there's a lot of issues that your office is pursuing, and we want the answers. So as everybody in this body is asking for info, they need to be able to pay the bill. Nothing's free. And as long as they're willing to do that, when we get down to the budget, you get the sufficient, I'm going to say appropriate funding, you get sufficient funding so you can do the mission that you're being tasked. Okay, Speaker, and with that, I would ask the Oversight Chair now to, if she has, sir.
I just, maybe, since I brought Sherrick with me, if he just read the 9 performance audits that we're currently doing, just so that you get an idea of what we are working, that we are working.
All right, sir. Mr.
No.
Just go ahead. Identify yourself and then tell us your position and then go for it.
So good afternoon. My name is Jarek Hernandez, and I'm an Accountability Auditor 3 with the OPA. And in response to the public auditor's request, we currently have about 9 performance audits in the work right now. The most, I guess, the most recent or the most upcoming performance audit that will be released hopefully soon is the procurement of the quarantine and quarantine hotels audit. Then we're also doing the CARES Act expenditures audit. We also have the port back pay audit, Part B. We had initially issued the Part A, I believe, earlier this year, and so we do have the Part B series that should be coming out. Also in the works are the Mayor's Council of Guam Host Community Benefits Fund and the validity of disbursements of NAF. We also have it's going to be starting is the DRT alcohol and tobacco taxes audit. And we're going to do an audit of the GGRF operations and the business privilege tax on military contracts. And lastly, we are just starting a an audit of procurement of consultation for services for mental health and substance abuse. So those are the kind of performance audits that are in the mill right now with our office.
All right. Thank you. And may God bless you on your pursuit of completing it. I will pass on now to the Oversight Chair, Vice Speaker Tina Rose Munoz-Barnes. Do you have any questions or comments?
Yes, I do. And Sizos Masi, Mr. Chair, for giving me the opportunity to speak. Do want to thank the panel members here, Speaker, Public Auditor Cruz, and of course, Mr. Hernandez. Thank you for being here. I do want to extend my undankla na Sizos Masi to you, Public Auditor, for taking the time to speak to our Public Policy Institute interns today about public policy and analysis and giving them that opportunity to look possibility in a career that you folks have. And I do know that there's some interns there that are very much interested. So thank you again for your time. I know it's really precious, but you've taken the time to work with the legislature's interns. So Sizos Masi, I also want to say that I appreciate your office responding to my request about conducting the audit on the defense contracts. And as I hear Mr. Hernandez speak, I know it's in the burner regarding the 9 performance audits that you're doing, but I'm hoping that part could go up to priority number 1 or 2. I do want to say that I believe, and I know that we need to get you more money that you can keep your auditors, not have them run off to greener pastures, given that your audits have shown different leakage in government collections, and I want to say, whether it's the tobacco taxes, the use taxes, you have identified shortfalls that have resulted in millions that we desperately need and are not collecting. So, and I know that you had a spill for, the last half an hour, and you talked about the whole mission and talked even about the organizational chart and the 7 vacant positions and what we could do to look at how that could be filled in one way or another. But for me personally, Liz, if you had to, like on the top of your list, look at what else would it take to give you the tools to help our government collect from legally violative organizations, could you just give me what could we do today? I know that I've shared draft legislations with you in reference to, putting concrete resources to the defense contracts, but today, to find the leakages, to know that the leakages are there, but to give you the resources to help our government, what would it be? Or what could it be?
With all due respect, it's not an issue of more money, because you could give me more money, lots more money, and as long as there's no equity or parity between us, our offices and the autonomous agencies, I am going to be the feeder agency for everybody else. I will train them and they will go. I will train them and they will go. My management team that stay, I thank God every day that they stay, because I know that they could be, but they love what they're doing at the office. And to watch them work with the younger auditors and putting things together, it's beautiful, really, seriously. Watch them interact to put the audits together. But it's not a matter of money. And just to correct, there aren't 7 vacancies. We filled all the lower positions. The only unfunded vacancies right now are the 4 top positions. And those are going to be, as I said, very costly positions to fill, and I'm not sure if we're ready to fund that. But if you can somehow get it to where there isn't such a great discrepancy in the salaries. I always encourage people to branch out and go places, and as long as they're moving up, but not lateral down and actually make more money than if they stayed in the office. And that's happening. You can go from a 2 to a 1 and make more money in an autonomous agency. And that's crazy. And until that happens, I'm just going to train them and have my auditors teach them how to do audits, only so that they can be poached by somebody else. But I don't begrudge the other agencies taking them, because I know that they're so good that hopefully that if they go and they work at some of the autonomous agencies, that will be a way that those agencies can now improve their operations so that they don't commit errors and do things that they shouldn't be doing. And having my alums there gives me some comfort in knowing that they will at least speak up. So I don't begrudge them, but
I actually...
But it's just an issue of getting more people and turning them out. I really don't know anything else except for parity among the positions.
I truly
so that
appreciate
we
your
can-
comments, Public Auditor Speaker. I think it's really important. I know that the Oversight Chair and I have had conversations about this, and we are looking at this intently, and as we look at your core values, your objective, the accountability, and why this was literally instituted in 1992, and why the need for accountability and transparency was put into place. So yes, I appreciate your comments, because we're definitely going to be not just looking at it, but hopefully we can, based on what our discussions were, that we would have a proposed draft for you to look at and see how we can work off of that as given to you in the past. I'm committed to making sure that not just the resources, but also the parity that you're looking for based on that. And we joke about, you train them and the other agencies take them, and we're supposed to be one team Guam, but as respect to you, I think it's important to realize that yes, you do need to maintain that continuity and try to keep them, because you train them, you give them all the resources, and other agencies know that, and let alone from having to pay for any of their training, you guys have already done that, and some agencies, or a lot of agencies, have been really lucky, but I'm going to try and see what we can do to make sure that that parity comes back to play in as far as the positions and as far as what is noted, because that new position was created. And I know that it's hard, especially because they're not in that unclassified position. They're in a classified position now, and is how do we take that and bring parity across the board with all the agencies as a whole. So you've got my commitment to working closely with you to get something out sooner than later. So Mr. Chair, thank you. His presentation was great. We have to break down, and we're hoping that if there's anything we can do to help them get the resource, not just the resources, but the tools they need to look at the leakages there, I'm going to work closely with you, and of course the agency is my oversight. So Sinamasi, Public Auditor, and Mr. Hernandez, and thank you again for being here. Sinamasi.
Thank you, Madam Vice Speaker. Senator Torres, do you have any questions, ma'am, or comments for the panel?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Public Auditor, we appreciate that your very thoughtful and responsible approach to this budget request today. It in fact is very conservative in terms of what you ask. I want to ask you, though, to elaborate a little bit on your request to have legislation amended so that boards and commissions will post their audio files on the respective agencies' websites. Are you proposing just audio files? Because right now the OPA has more than just audio files on its website posted per agency. So you're recommending that just the audio portion, which is takes up a lot of memory, be taken out of your responsibility and posted on the agencies? Is that specifically that?
Yes, and that's because audio takes up so much more space than just the minutes, A minutes is just a PDF, takes up virtually nothing. But then if the audio's in there, it goes up into, I don't even know the language of the megabytes and terabytes, whatever those things are, bytes, whatever. It gets bigger. I just know it's bigger.
And transparency won't be compromised anyways, because you would have the ability to ensure that they have in fact complied, right, if they were to be, okay.
No, they notify us that they've done it, and we will check. And then
Okay.
they'll be linked to each other.
That seems reasonable then. I want to go back to your discussion about the positions and the study that your predecessor underwent with regard to the positions, the renaming of the positions to accountability auditors as opposed to accountants, and then the recommended pay scale that was then given to DOA. And you mentioned that DOA reduce the salaries from what your predecessor had provided to them based on a study. Is that correct? I just want to get that clear.
Yes.
So how is it that if an agency commissions a study that is presented based on a scientific methodology for arriving at those pay recommendations, why would it not be honored, do you suppose, by DOA? Why would they unilaterally reduce it at their whim?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I'm not going to say that it was their whim. Unfortunately, and I'll take part of the blame, when I asked and directed Doris to have the study done, we didn't provide legislative authority for it to be accepted as recommended. And since it is, as the Vice Speaker says, we are one government, or should be, they are the HR for the government, and so it had to go to them, and they had to clear it. And so you can see the difference between the leading edge study and the final product that had the Director of Administration signature of what was approved.
That study would still be valid, wouldn't it, if we were to revisit that as a starting point for any adjustments to the pay within your office, do you think?
We could.
I would
I mean, that
proffer
could
that
be, because
then.
it would be a complete, because pursuant to my request of Doris, when I was chair, I told her, create something that because you believe that they are different from everybody else. They're not auditors like auditors in other departments, because they do all kinds of other things besides, they do procurement appeals, they do financial, all kinds of, they write up that make sure that they are recognized as being different. And so she gave them a completely different designation. We're the only ones in government that have the designation accountability auditor. We have accountability before our auditor name. We're just not just auditors.
I would then suggest that we work with the committee, the oversight committee, and see if that might be an avenue to address what is obviously going to be a recurring problem for you, where you're not able to retain and in some instances recruit because of your salary levels right now.
It'd be most appreciated. Thank
And then
you.
I also took note in your presentations that you have 4 new staff members that you are going to acquire this fiscal year, to include 2 in the auditor accountability 1 positions, 1 in the accountability 2 position, and 1 in the accountability 3 position. Is that correct?
Actually, we filled all the positions.
Oh, they're all filled already. Okay.
They're all filled. We
Okay.
didn't get 2s. We announced it. We announced positions for 3s, 2s, and 1s. And the only applicants that came in and were willing to take the salaries was our 3 came back, thankfully. She came back from DOA. We didn't have anybody in the 2s that were qualified, but we had a huge number of 1s that applied, and so consequently, all the positions that we filled them with 1s as opposed to 2s.
In your chart, it notes that the supervising accountability auditor position is vacant and partially funded. You noted also that you chose not to fill these positions, not wanting to make the decision and to perhaps leave it to your successor if you should not keep the office for much longer. You made the remark that it may be top-heavy, but I wonder if that might be at least 2 of those 4 positions, or at least 1 of the 4 positions might be a reasonable addition to your staffing pattern, just to facilitate the burden on the accountant threes who are more or less filling that supervisory role in addition to their auditor's role. And I wonder if that might be a sensible way, because it goes from you and skips over two supervisory positions, and then the next in line are the accountant threes who more or less have assumed that supervisory
Yes, they
role.
are. And as I said earlier, I thank them. They're godsend
Yeah, but maybe
to
it's a
having
bit,
done
maybe
that.
it's a
And they
bit much.
could. The only issue is budget. It's going to be a substantial amount of money that is going to have to be assurance that it's going to continue.
Yes.
Of whether or not this body will continue to fund it at the increase. If I was to pick both of those up and fill these threes with the twos that I have, yeah, that would be great. But the thing is that means in the future years, my budget cost would be more. This year, it's an organic 10% increase just to cover the increments that I think that I'm going to have to give during this year.
Yes, and the reason I make that proposal is when you think about the burden that they shoulder, in terms of retention and recruitment, if the position was right-sized to the responsibility and not loaded with so much more responsibility at that pay, it only works to the benefit of the employee. And I'm making a pitch in consideration of the employees, basically. I understand that they've done an outstanding job in doing far more, doubling down on their duties. But, in terms of a long-term plan for retention and recruitment, I would think that should be leveled off. They should perform what is expected of them at the salary, as opposed to having additional responsibilities on top of their jobs at the same reduced salary. It only makes sense and in all fairness, and so that's why I'm making that pitch.
Oh, no, it's an excellent idea. And again, I just want to say, the four that I have, God bless them, because not only do they have their responsibilities and overseeing the audits that are being done, each one of them chairs committees. Jarek does the budget committee, one's in IT, one's in website. They all chair different committees to make sure. Where I don't have an IT department, you'll note in the staffing pattern, I don't have an executive secretary. I don't have a special assistant. And you all know my capabilities. I can barely type.
And so,
But the thing is that I couldn't in good conscience ask for an executive secretary, because the positions of executive secretary throughout the government, I wouldn't insult any of my auditors to bring in an executive secretary for me who was going to be making more than them.
understood. I'm just considering what would make for a work environment that is fair and balanced and justly compensated, and that's all I'm advocating for, because otherwise we're going to have very young people burning out with no opportunity to really have lives outside of their work, and who wants that, right? So it really is a life balance issue. But I think in all fairness, it only seems right that where there is a tier of responsibility, everybody fits into their scope, and while we expect 100% and sometimes 100%, we don't expect 200%, where they're assuming their job and the job of a supervisor. So, but thank you very much for your thoughtfulness, and your presentation was quite thorough. I really don't have anything else to ask.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Torres. I do see Minority Leader here. Senator Chris, Minority Leader, you're recognized.
Sijus Masi, Madam Chair. Welcome to Speaker, our OPA today, and Mr. Hernandez, welcome. I join my colleague in saying that, you certainly have presented a very frugal and a very bare bones minimum budget. I was texting my staff as you were talking and said, I think I found a bill to introduce, and it's to change your name to OPA&T, Office of the Public Accountability and Training. Many financial institutions on Guam sometimes have that similar issue, that they feel as though they're a training ground for other financial institutions. So I sympathize, and I think some of our colleagues may look to seeing if we can remedy that situation. Mr. Hernandez, I also wanted to comment that learning that, I don't know how you guys did it or do it, but learning that you get together with your team members and let the public auditor know what you feel he shouldn't be auditing, that's a brave move, but I just think that speaks to the integrity of the group, that you are. And I know that your OPA certainly appreciates that and appreciates that situation. In your remarks, Speaker, I am glad to hear that you'd like to see a much earlier reconciliation of the annual audit. Primarily for budgetary reasons. I mean, as you know, in January that falls, right in time with when we start looking at the request, from the executive on budgeting for the government of Guam, and your recent findings in confirming the audit really kind of confirmed what a lot of us were thinking, that it really is, as you mentioned, the largesse of the federal government that has allowed for, as well as maybe a single taxpayer on a large payment to get us to this point, which is good. I mean, but we got to think about that as we forecast and sit down now and contemplate this year's budget. So I appreciate, the thought process with regard to that. Of course, there's not much to talk about with your budget, so I'm going to hopefully not have steam coming out of your ears in this question.
Thank you.
I think the largest frustration that I've seen during your time, Mr. Speaker, as the public auditor, has been issues with GSA. And I guess I wanted to just ask a two-part question. I haven't seen any updates, and I don't think there's been a ruling in terms of your most recent decision to, in your findings on an audit, to suspend a vendor. Is that still up in the air?
That's on appeal to the Superior Court right now.
Okay. And that's basically on the premise of your authority, correct?
I believe so.
Okay. So, and then also in looking, and we just recently, I think, passed kind of a legislative audit mechanism that was signed by the governor. I don't think she was too happy with it, but in my reading of the transmittal. But now we have emergency procurement reports on a monthly basis coming to the legislature, and hopefully that is something we will be receiving in a timely manner. But this issue of, I guess audits bear out integrity. You can't audit integrity, if you will, and intentions. But is there any mechanism from the auditor's perspective that you see that would increase the ability to kind of monitor working alongside GSA?
It's technology. I think, some of you know how computer illiterate I am. But I've attended enough seminars to understand that they now have AI doing a lot of the audits. And if somehow we could get a system with little AI bots or whatever they are in there that's going to send us notices that, you know, this is happening, this is happening. I think there should be a way of being able to do that. I know that there should be a way to do that. Don't ask me how it's going to be done, but I know how. Thankfully, I have a whole bunch of young people that I call into my office. I mean, poor Jarek, I even have him come down because I don't know how to move my digital signature onto something that I type for myself.
Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion, because as such, other than protests or complaints or things that are discovered or prodding, there's really no major audit of that process per se. I mean, would that be your perspective as well? Just in terms of the overall, I mean, it's such a voluminous and large organization for that performance of procurement for the, you know.
It could and it should, and I think at this point maybe I should probably make this disclaimer. When you read the single audit that came out the other day, the amount that's listed for the question cost, that's not the entire question cost, because I tried to explain to Chris Malfunction on the air. Carefully read the criteria that they have, because it says, each finding, it says the criteria, and it'll tell you this is what the law says you're supposed to be doing. And then it says the condition, and the condition is, well, we're going to audit 62 cases of thousands of small procurements. They only have the 62, and of the 62, they found this many were improperly done. And so that's the only question cost that they can list in the report. If they went through and they audited the entire amount, then they would have to list the entire amount. But as auditors, and I know because they remind me of it, you can't extrapolate. It's only what you find and what you have in evidence. And if you didn't do a sample size of 2,000, then shut up. You only did a sample size of 20, and that's all you're going to list is your question cost. But carefully read it, because then you understand that, yes, there is a problem. But the other thing that I think I should point out to everybody is, in the single audit for this year, the federal government also sent out an advisory on December the 20th, wherein they informed all the external auditors. Usually we ask you to look at 12 different things. For this year, for single audit, you do not need to look at certain numbers of them. They're denoted in the body with an N under it. They're no longer needed to look at procurement, cash management, a couple of other things. I mean, I was shocked. But I think what it was the federal government knew that throughout the year, when they were changing their FAQs and their advisories, they would change sometime. And if you were going to strictly read from the beginning, some people would be returning billions of dollars. And so they recognized the fact that they screwed up. And because when CARES Act passed in March, it was May before the things came out. Even now, with the ARP, it was passed in February, but now it's just now, I think maybe the 30th days has finally run in Federal Register where the report's out on what you can use or how to use it. And it just makes for craziness. And so it's not being looked at, and we may want to look at it, and you may have auditors like Jarek and I went, this is, and then we're told, well, that's not something that we're we'll have to look at in a single audit. But we can look at it in our performance audit, or we can look at it in our own. We can speak from the law, but it's different from the guidance that's OMB, so there may be some differences coming out.
I like your idea of exploring programming and IT capabilities and technology to kind of build some more integrity in the system. I just simply believe that it's, you know, your office is so important, and just the way the audits come out and what you've been doing. I mean, I would think that with the publicity that it has, most people that are managing government's money, the people's money, you know, have to think twice. And so I'm just, any chance I can think of to put a bigger hammer together.
Yeah, I mean, if we could have data analytics in the system, you know, it could point out to us, why is this that GSA had these 5 purchases on June 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18, and all of them were $1,000 under the max of the small business reporting. But it's all the same thing to the same vendor, and then you realize, they divided it up so they didn't have to do the IFB. But unless you have computer analytics, data analytics to be able to point that out, you'll go cross-eyed going down the list trying to read all that. But as I understand it, with AI and data analytics, you can type it in and say you want it to look for this thing, and it'll go through 10,000 transactions, and it'll say on this date there was all of these small little purchases to all the same person, or there was credit card use by a government agency on a Sunday. But we need to update our systems.
I like it. So in closing, Mr. Speaker, in the event that there's the eventual ruling shows that there's not a broad enough authority in your office, in all seriousness now of introducing bills, I will introduce a bill to ensure that you have that ability, because findings such as you have had really are something that are deserving of, precluding vendors from participating when you find egregious situations. And I concur with your decision, and I hope it's upheld. But if it's not, and legislation is required, stand ready to help you with that. And thank you once again with your presentation. I'll work with my colleagues to see if there's anything we can do to assist you in this fiscal year. Sedus Masi, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Duenas. Senator Brown, do you have any questions or comments for the panel?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I certainly appreciate the presentation that our public auditor and his office has provided to update us on the operations of his office, certainly some of the challenges. As we go through the budget process, and certainly Public Auditor Cruz, of course you've had various titles, but for this moment I'll call you Public Auditor Cruz. You've seen certainly what's involved in the budget process, and certainly the amount of money that our government consumes to operate. And I think we can agree, I think you see the general trend of the comments that we're saying, but I think is very much reflective of what the public expectations are for greater accountability in the government, certainly hence the title of your respective department. I'm sure we will look at issues on how we can address a little more parity with regards to the compensation of your staff. I think we want to ensure we have an experienced staff at the Public Auditor's Office during your tenure, and certainly for the future public auditors to come, because I think it's very important that we have that level of review within the government. Historically in the past, because we had the appointed auditor, we eventually created the elected public auditor position. Because we didn't feel that position of the public auditor should be something under the chief executive, and certainly open to the influence of the chief executive. So certainly having an independent public auditor's office is very critically important to review the operations of our government and our expenditures, and are we spending the public's money properly? And if we're not, to bring forth what corrective action needs to be taken, or if it's criminal action that's happening, then of course, properly refer it to the respective office, be it the AG or so, and so forth. So I don't have a lot of questions, but I do want to get a general idea. I know we've gone over the budget process. It's pretty straightforward with regards to what your office is requesting. But I do want to ask you, since we have the opportunity, is in your experience so far as public auditor, what are you seeing as a major trend or concern with accountability in the government of Guam? What do you see as a predominant problem that needs to be addressed, and what do you see as the least area of concern that you're finding in the course of these respective audits that you are providing for us and for the public to review?
Well, two things. I mean, there are two things that we've done. One is I really want to push for the procurement training to make sure that people that are doing it understand. And with procurement, you and I have to file our financial disclosure, but we don't have those people that are involved in procurement file their financial disclosure. I really do think that you might want to consider legislation to where financial disclosures are required of individuals that are doing procurement, so that if someone somehow living high on the hog, way beyond their means of being an employee at the port or something, place else, that you can see that. That might be someplace and the ethics training, so people understand that you have a responsibility to be honest and accountable to the funds that have been entrusted to you. That this isn't your personal slush fund to go off and do things. It's this is the public's money, and be careful and be honest and accountable for it. But those two. The other thing is that, and I know the chairman understands this, is we really need more people up at Department of Revenue and Taxation. We keep doing the audits. I mean, I think every year, a fourth of our audits are at Revenue and Taxation. It's almost like I keep joking we should have an annex office there, because we spend so much time there. But the thing is that they need people, and they need people in the areas where they're collecting it. And I know the chairman knows that small little unit, his unit was larger than the unit that collected all the taxes. How is that possible that 6 people collect almost $600 million for us? And so God bless them that they do so well, but they really need additional assistance, and they need they need technology. They want to do something, I hope. They want to do something, but they just don't have the technology. Like when we turned out the use tax audit, we pointed out that, 747's landing it weekly with everything from Amazon that's coming into Ireland, and you see the use tax report, and it's less than God, it's almost as small as the budget for my office. And it should be multiples that. But they don't even have a scanner. They literally, in our report, we pointed out they had 400 boxes stacked up in a warehouse. God bless them if they know how to find it, what if you ask for a document. But it should be scanned so that it can be searched. And you can follow it. You can find out that, you know, Joanne Brown purchased more than $5,000 worth of stuff from off-island this year, and so everything after this, she should be having to pay, you know, some use tax. But right now, they have no idea how much any of us have purchased, how much has come in. So they really need a system. And I know with data analytics and AI that all of this can and should be done and could be done properly if we just invested in it, and it could be collected. Because we have enough tax laws, we just need to make sure that we collect it.
Well, I certainly appreciate your insight with regards to that. I mean, even with regards to the procurement officers and department and agencies, because that opens up what I look at as a shield that we put around the rest of the government of Guam. I mean, in our respective positions, as you know, we're pretty much what we would call temporary, so to speak. I mean, our employment has a certain timeline unless we're re-elected to our respective capacities, and all of us pretty much are unclassified. But it's a classified service in the government of Guam that does concern me a bit, because we put such a shield around it, such a protective garment around it, that when you do see these misuse of government resources or expenditures or whatever the case may be, there's not the same level of exposure, simply because we'll always say it's a personnel matter, and then it doesn't become something that most people end up feeling the presence of public awareness that otherwise, you know, could have been you taking a paper clip and it's a front page news story. So I do look as we move forward in this process within the government of how do we institute a greater level of responsibility of all public servants, because we're all public servants. I mean, we're all receiving money from the people of Guam, even if it's through a federal source. It's still intended for our people. And how can we expand that, and how can we, certainly some areas might be unintentional because of unawareness, like you said. There's maybe more training, like in the procurement area, that can ensure that our government employees that are working in this are well trained for the work that they're doing, and there's a need for that, versus real intentional actions to essentially take things or do things within the government that they're not supposed to be doing, that may be illegal, that harm our people. And so certainly those are things that I have an interest in looking at, and appreciate the work, Public Auditor, that you're doing, and continuing with your staff to provide the information, the insight, and also the expectation that government agencies should know and be expectant that these type of reviews are going to continue to happen, so that we can bring these issues to light and address corrective action as needed. So thank you very much for your presentation this afternoon, and keeping us informed on these issues and the work that you do and the work of your staff.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Brown. Speaker, Public Auditor Cruz, thank you for your attendance today. I think my colleagues have asked all the questions that they wanted to ask. And that being said, the committee will conclude the budget hearing with the Office of Public... Do you want to make a statement?
No, I just want to thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. The committee will continue to receive testimony. Please address your written testimony to the Committee on General Government Operation, Appropriation, and Housing, and submit it via email to Senator Joe S. Agustin at gmail.com, or to my office located at Rand Care Building, 2nd floor, Suite 3, 761 South Marine Corps Drive, Tamuning, Guam. Since much for attendance, Speaker, Public Auditor Mr. Cruz, and Mr. Hernandez, thank you for participating today. And for those at home, thank you for watching. The budget hearing on Bill 55-36 COR relative to the Office of Public Accountability is now adjourned. It is 3:35. Please be safe and drive safely. Take care.